Hey, John. Hey, Richelle. Welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
We're super glad to have you guys on the show today. You all are doing major things in the world of real estate investing, and you're doing it as a couple. And so we're super glad that you guys are here to be able to kind of share some insight and wisdom with our audience in this arena. But before we get into your advice, can you just take a moment and introduce yourselves to the audience and let them know what you're all about?
Definitely. Well, thank you guys both for having us. We're really excited to be guests on the show and really share our message with your audience. So thank you very much. Yeah. My name is John. I'm an entrepreneur by heart, but I'm trained in urban planning, city planning. I really, real estate's a family business for me, so I really love it. And I'm really passionate about cities, people, and places. So real estate's really a big part of my life.
Yeah. And I'm Richelle. I'm a chemical engineer by profession. And also have a family history in real estate and real estate investing as well.
Awesome. So let's talk about that family history, I guess. So what first led you guys to diving into real estate investing?
Well, like I said, a family always made it very much an option and something to consider. And so I always thought that once I had the means and the ability to do it, I thought I would get in the game and give it a go.
Did real estate as well, investing?
Yeah, so my dad bought his first place when he was in his 20s. So he's from the Caribbean, and he ended up buying the next door neighbor's house and then allowing his mom to rent back and use the rent money for the rest of her life. And then didn't get a chance to do much of it while he was in the States until more recently. And so, yeah, so it was always a good inspiration and a good idea to get involved. And once I started in grad school, then I thought it would be a good idea to buy a place and subsidize my living. And I came to Columbus, Ohio, and met this guy, and just kind of put some gas on the fire.
Similar story for you, John?
Very similar. I'd say I was very unconscious for a long time, so I'll say I had a more non-traditional path. I'm very much my father's son. I'm a junior in the family. So I was always, underneath his shadow. I'd say I was very unconscious. I mean, I was always on construction. My dad was a builder in New York for a long time. So I was on construction sites and, in the brokerage and the office under the table. Mostly I wanted food and wanted to go home, so there was never a time where I'm like, oh, I know exactly what you're doing. I acted as an assistant sometimes, and I never really knew what I was doing. I was kind of just happy to help my dad. He was my role model. So, one day I think I woke up, around 18, 19, and the money train's not there. You're like, oh my God, I'm becoming an adult. What am I going to do? So for me, I think I finally woke up and I had to, really ask my father about moving forward and learning the family business and trying to, get my education to really create the financial situation he had for us.
So you guys have been around this stuff all your life, and now you all are doing it on your own. So you guys got a lot of history and experience in this area. So help us understand, how can real estate investing kind of correlate with achieving financial freedom?
Definitely.
You want to take this one?
I think that's a great question. So first we're going to define financial freedom.
Yeah.
So for us, financial freedom, real estate is really a vehicle to own your time. So, the part of your freedom to not be restricted, to have to, let's say, be employed with someone else and dedicate your time, passion, and energy. Real estate really is that vehicle to buy back some of your time and, dedicate it to other, ambitions and passions.
Yeah. I think for us, we want to not just cover our living expenses, but also those wants, right? And have a full, an abundant life.
An abundant life.
And real estate investing can really allow you to do that. So you're not solely tied to your job. Obviously we still have some professions right now because we're still pretty young, but eventually it's going to replace that and then some, which allows you a lot of mobility and everything. So, yeah.
So let's talk about some of the benefits of becoming a real estate investor.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, I can start. So, like I said, I bought my first place when I was in grad school. And when I finished, I went on a round the world trip. So I went backpacking and I hired a property manager. And I got this email from this lady saying, hello, your tenant has paid and there's money being deposited in your account. I'm literally on the other side of the world and someone is emailing me telling me I got paid. I was like, I don't know how this happened, but I think I'm onto something. And so that was after school. And then I moved to Columbus after that. So I'm like, I don't know what I have to do to buy more of this house buying landlord rent stuff. I need more of that in my life, like right now. So, so for me, that was the aha moment. So John talks about being conscious. It was a good idea, but it wasn't real to me until that experience.
Awesome. So let's talk about when you guys came together. I guess you got married, and then so how did that, how did real estate investing come after marriage for you guys?
So we're engaged actually, but soon to be. So we have an interesting, the ultimate funny backstory, and it wasn't OkCupid or Tinder. So I used to run an investment fund, an investment company, and I facilitated investments for professionals. Mm-hmm. Anyway, one day I decided, I was very young when I got into property, and I spent a lot of money. I mean, I just had a lot of fun. I was really into clothing and just
flashy.
My mentality wasn't being, prudent or focusing on savings or retirement. It was more so I work really hard. I want to enjoy this. And I wanted people to recognize it also. So part of it was ego. But, the point being, there was a transition in my life where I said, hey, I want to be stable. I want to really have financial freedom. So I'll need an abundant savings. But I want to get married and be a good partner. So to do that, I need a path and a plan. And, part of that was reaching out to a financial advisor. And it happens by happenstance after working with my financial advisor was a woman, but she ended up introducing us. Richelle had an interest in investing in real estate and had moved to Columbus and kind of was looking to get into the community.
So the opposite side of the story is his financial advisor is an engineer by training. And so we met at, I don't know if you've heard of NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers. So we met at the professional meeting of that. And obviously she and I became friends. And I was like, oh my goodness, I just had this awesome email from property advisor or property manager. I need to buy more houses, blah, 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 blah. She was like, if you want to get in real estate and you're in Columbus, Ohio, this guy is the guy to meet. And that was this guy.
Oh,
nice.
Love it.
Now, you guys are in the position where you have, both of you all are kind of knowledgeable about real estate. You all understand how it works. And so, there was this natural synchronization between you two. What advice would you give when there's a relationship where one spouse is like, yo, we need to do real estate investment because it's great and it's this and it's that. And the other spouse is like, I don't know. That sounds too risky and this and that and the other. So what do you do when you have one part of the couple that's all in and the other one is a little skeptical? What advice would you give to kind of get them together on the same page?
I'm going to try to start with that one. The first thing I'd say is address and validate your partner's concern. Yeah. So a lot of times we just try to rush and hammer home our point or, lead them along our path and perspective. I think, the big part of the process is slowing down and really trying to, validate their concerns and really dig deeper and understand really what's behind, whether it's fear, whether it's, apprehension, really try to just acknowledge and figure that out first and foremost.
I agree.
And good.
Oh, and then we also wrote an article about that.
We did.
So we can link to that in your show notes. But it was talking about how real estate is brick and mortar, but relationships are timeless. And really, real estate is important, but it's not the only vehicle to financial independence. It just happens to be the one that we like. We're Caribbean. I think it's a Caribbean thing to like real estate, right? But at the end of the day, you have to realize it's just brick and mortar. Like that's all it is, right?
Relationships are priceless.
Exactly.
And, you can buy, sell houses and property all day long, but fundamentally, you can't lose it over monetary possessions and, business.
Exactly.
Now, you all you mentioned day jobs. You all have real estate ventures. You're engaged. That's a whole lot to juggle. So if it's not the financial aspect of it, another thing that kind of hinders people and makes them kind of skeptical or prevents them from launching out into it is the time factor. How much time you have to put into investing in real estate. So how do you guys balance all this stuff that you're doing?
Systems.
Dedication. I mean, I think between the two of us, there's really a deep fire of the lifestyle that we want to achieve and the way of life and the opportunities to participate in lives and give and, really do good. Mm-hmm. And I think on one end, we recognize financial freedom, once again, not only allows a part of an abundant life is being able to help others. Right. So for the scale and opportunity to help others, it's a lot of responsibility. And it's the same responsibility with owning real estate. A lot of times we forget we're providing a social service, with housing. But systems are also very...
Yeah, I think you're right. Being a landlord is the original social entrepreneurship, right? Like the fact that you can not only provide means and housing for your own family, but for someone else's family also. Like that is the ultimate altruism, you know. And I think people like to label it as slumlord and all that and give it those nasty terms. But really, I'm not just providing for my family. I'm going to provide for yours also. And then to entrust someone literally tens of thousands of dollars, you know, you're you know.
I like that because I'm a very organized person. So when you say systems, tell our audience, how does that look in real estate?
Because you all have a whole
I like that.
system of systems where you guys talk about the 6 mistakes that we should all avoid if we want to get into real estate. I know one of them is systems. So let's dig into that one.
Absolutely. Awesome. So one of our seminal articles, I would call it, is the Real Estate Investing Business Plan. And really that's talking about starting with the goal in mind, right? So you don't want to go out and start deploying capital or getting loans and you don't really know what you're trying to accomplish. So really you want to think about where are you going, and then really set up your life to support that. And then on the practical side, I mean, we could talk about the tenant management and, you know, what it means on a month by month basis if you're interested in that.
You know, I think there's 2 parts of the system. So there's the professional and business systems, but then the spiritual, emotional systems. So on one end, we also wrote an article about the miracle morning and the process of just having mental clarity and space and being able to really have the mental health. So, you know, part of it means, you know, being young, not just young. I mean, you wake up at 5 a.m., you do meditation, you read, you do affirmations. I mean, you're going through a consistent routine in which you can rely and trust on going through a process, and really, you know, it kind of culminates everything, both the professional, but then having the time to process and think and meditate.
Yes. See, I got it on board with the miracle morning.
Well, let's talk about the systems. I know that you mentioned the tenant management. I think that's what you call it.
Yes. So,
yeah, tell our audience a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So obviously, you know, we're landlords, so the rent is due on the first of the month. So one of the things that I advocate doing is sending invoices. So a lot of landlords are like, okay, it's the first, you know, your rent is due. I don't need to send you an invoice. But you also have a mortgage payment that's due, and they send you a bill every month. And the gas company also sends you a bill every month. So I might as well send you one as well. So on the 20th of the month, we send an invoice and allow them, you know, 10 days grace period until the first to pay. And just really in that regular cadence of communication and making it more of a professional look, right? And really being transparent about what the fees are and what the balances are.
That's good.
Now, I think another mistake that you guys talk about before we can even get into the systems and the tenants, you say not pulling the trigger to even buy property. So talk us through why this is such a huge mistake that many people are making.
Yeah, go for it.
So real estate is it's higher up on the financial pyramid. Yeah. So, you know, so one, we don't recommend it as a starting point. It's really establish your savings, your emergency funds, your insurance, you know, your health savings, and then you can start talking about investments, financial planning. But when you do get to real estate, you know, when the deals are with timing and execution. So too often, I think, you know, it's hard to have a metrics. I think a lot of, you know, investors go into it without systems or benchmarks. So part of the process is knowing what are the indicators that make this a good deal, and what are the criteria, and what's going to get me over the hurdle. So if all my, you know, indicators are met, I can pull the trigger. A lot of times I think new investors don't know how to evaluate the property holistically and that process of the real estate life cycle. So they become overwhelmed because they think it's a good deal. They know it's a good deal, but you know, there's unknown factors that are still unclear and that hinders them. And a lot of times there's great opportunity, but you know, it's overwhelming.
So how do you push past that overwhelming feeling and get to the point to where you look at the deal, if the deal is right, and how do you push past that feeling of overwhelmingness to actually get the deal done?
I think part of it's, you know, a competence thing. On the other end, it's also just strategy and planning. You know, I think a lot of times just go into it with a process. I think it's, you know, evaluate. We recommend, how much money do you want to make? That's the first step. I think a lot of people say, I want to own real estate, and they get into looking houses and picking a zip code. The first step should be, hey, it's a financial business and I need a return on my investment. Mm-hmm. So how much money do I want to make? Do I cover my, you know, my income and replace my job? And how many units? And you reverse engineer it, and you can really logically work backwards. So it starts with how much money, then, you know, do I want to self-manage? Do I want to property manage? a lot of the diligence we recommend is the planning, and it's so boring because no one wants to do a business plan.
Right.
It sounds like no one looks at those anymore. But just having the roadmap and understanding what milestones look like, it'll really save you a lot of time and streamline it.
Right, and then we also have a property evaluator spreadsheet on our website.
Yeah.
So with the business plan, at the end of the day, you also want to know if I type in these numbers, is this a yay or a nay? But the yay or the nay really comes from the business plan to know what meets your criteria. Because one person may want $100,000 or $150,000 house in the suburbs versus I might want a $20,000 house in the hood. And neither one is wrong. It's just a matter of what really suits my goals, right?
Your investment model.
Correct. And so evaluating the numbers in absence of really having that long range plan, it's only one-sided. So you really have to have both. So the numbers are important, absolutely. But really, why are the numbers important? Really, what is that long range plan that you're going towards?
And we'll be sure to have a link to the property evaluation tool that Richelle mentioned in the show notes. Just head over to hisandhermoney.com and find John and Richelle's interview, and you'll see the link to the evaluating. Now, you mentioned something in passing with your last response, John. You said, do you want to self-manage versus property manage? Like, that's the $1 million question that a lot of people have. How do you even answer that? How do you figure out which way is the best way to go?
Well, first you reference Shakespeare, so to be or not to be an invisible landlord. That's true. But really it comes down to, I think, preference, timing, control, and really what role you want to play. So recently we wrote about kind of, understanding whether you can delegate and be hands off, or whether you're the kind of person who needs to be hands on and manage. Mm-hmm. So it also is a lifestyle choice. I think hands-on managing is for someone who has more time and maybe more experience as well to manage the kind of day-to-day headaches. And how intimate do you want to be with your tenants? Some people want to be private. They just want an LLC and a shell company. They don't want you to know that, hey, it's John Delia and I own this house. They kind of want to create a barrier and a wall. And sometimes it's just to protect themselves. And that's okay. But I think everyone has to develop a criteria in which what kind of lifestyle and how present do we want to be in our residents' lives.
Yeah. That's a personal choice.
So another mistake that could be costing someone big is that in the area of poor renovation or project management. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think contractors are the bane of a real estate investor's existence. Just because it can be very costly, and it's not a situation where you want to go in presenting yourself as naive and presenting yourself in a way where you can get taken advantage of. So it's a matter of understanding what counts as over improvement or under improvement for that neighborhood. I mean, obviously you want to provide a quality product, but I may not need to offer granite countertops, for example.
And
right? Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
We would also recommend a lot of new investors. We think they bite off more than they can chew. So even early on for me, I quit my first project and had to sell the property really quickly. So when I spun off, it's different when you're spending someone else's money in a job and you're spending your own money as a business owner. Mm-hmm. So some of the financial decisions, some of the operating expenses that you don't see behind the scenes, you really get to experience them intimately. Yeah. So I think not having proper experience in terms of just knowing the process of the renovation and just relative costs at different levels. I mean, there's a suburban cost, there's, a mid-grade, and then there's a subpar. And everyone has their fees and pricing. So knowing where can you fall in the spectrum and just the full process of the renovation so you don't lose your shirt.
And there's a rule of thumb that is kind of funny. It says you can get good, fast, or cheap. Pick two, right? So those are the three legs of the contractor stool. So pick two, right? And that's really, at least in my experience, that's all you're really going to get.
So when you're new and you don't want to get taken advantage of, how, if you don't have kind of this background in real estate, real estate is the way to go. There's so many benefits. It can help you achieve financial freedom, but you're not the person that grew up swinging a hammer. How do you get your knowledge base up so that when you're engaging these contractors, you're not getting taken advantage of because you kind of have an idea what you're talking about?
I think you can learn it yourself. You can partner with somebody, or you can hire a full service.
And I think, you can also spend more time in the planning. So, even in the article, in the business plan article, you're gonna outline. So in your renovation section or in your investment strategy, you got to decide, do I want to buy a turnkey property? Do I want to buy a renovation? Or do I want to buy something that just needs small cosmetics? But then within that, you should be evaluating the neighborhood and calling up other listings and saying, hey, let me get inside and see what this property is selling for. Mm-hmm. And look, are they putting in ceramic tile? Is it, vinyl? Is it carpet? And you can literally start on a piece of paper, write out, they had carpet in this one, they had tile in this one, and what type it was. Go to your local Lowe's and go up and down the aisles and literally tell yourself, how much does this cost? Right. Another really great resource we have on the site is a book list. Yeah. And there's one in particular. It's I think it's called How Houses Work. Yeah. And essentially, I think a lot of people don't know the basic systems of houses. When you're a homeowner, you notice it more intimately with different issues and problems. But, how houses work. My first rental, I didn't know how furnaces worked. I didn't know how plumbing and hot water heaters were hooked up. And I intimately worked for a company and managed crews of renovations. Yep. Like I said, I was unconscious. I was conscious enough to know I wanted to go home and I wanted my money. But when you really have to kind of deploy your own capital, just be diligent in your upfront research, and you should be able to save a lot of the headache and the unexpected. And,
as a way to get going on the free side, volunteering for Habitat for Humanity is a great way to get your skills up. I mean, they will literally teach you how to spackle, how to do tape in bed. I'm not saying I'm the best one, but I can get it done. You know what I mean? Hold me clothes.
A pink hard hat.
Hey man, it's a cute hard hat though. Yeah, that's one of the ways where because my parents live in Texas, and so if I need help, it's better and easier to practice on someone else's house versus your own. And they're really helpful, and they have master contractors. I mean, they're not going to give one of their donors a shabby house, so they're going to make sure that you are learning how to do it properly. So you can learn trim work, you can learn how to hang doors, literally everything that you would need to know outside of the heavy, HVAC and heavy plumbing type stuff. Yeah. But all those minor things, just so that you have a clue and an awareness, I think volunteering for Habitat for Humanity is a wonderful way to get going and just get your head in the game.
All right, so the next mistake you guys talk about is not vetting the neighborhood and or understanding the city development plans. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's heavy right there.
Yeah. That's all the way up John's alley.
It's deep. So I guess, essentially, there's places where you can and can't invest. So when I was a new investor, I'm from New York. I moved to Ohio. I was going to Ohio State, and I was really adamant about wanting to invest in real estate. And the first thing I realized is my budget didn't match off-campus housing, and I just couldn't afford to play. So then, I studied city planning, and I was really big into big picture planning and long-term trends. So I said to myself, okay, the city does research in a neighborhood plan for every city in every state in every county. So you simply go to your city website, cityofcolumbus.gov, go to building and zoning department, and then go to your community and pick your community and go to the community plan. And what I did early on with the help of a Fisher MBA student who was interning with us was essentially be strategic in our investment strategy so that we could hit a critical mass in one location. That way, if more investment opportunities arise, we could scale up a lot quicker rather than being around the city and spend more resources. Anyway, when you look at the plan, it's essentially telling you about for the next 5 or 10 years, the development that's expected, the standards of the development, the kind of codes, the kind of needs that it tells you the neighborhood wants, needs, and ambitions. Right. Use that to guide your investment strategy. So for me, I had to go to transitional neighborhoods, but I wouldn't just pick the neighborhood everyone said was up and coming for the next 30 years. I picked neighborhoods that had strong indicators of growth, of population increase, and of an anchor investor. So that's a big institution like a hospital, a school, a big employer who's, donated $1 million to this community. So you can really get strategic by going a deeper level. So not just with Zillow and Google Maps, but really going to the local city or municipality's website and going to building zoning plan. It'll really shed some light on the community.
Very good. Very good tip.
I'm about to go log in right now.
Very good tip.
So
and as they're talking, I'm thinking about all the mistakes that we made when we purchased our first investment property.
And we ain't been back since.
We sure haven't. And it was like, I was trying, to not even touch it with a 10-foot pole. Seriously. And everything that they're saying are things that we did not do. We didn't know any better. So we're definitely going to dip our toes back in the water again.
Now, when we go, I want to make sure that when people go, like say, John, this is your thing, right? When you talk about building and zoning. So somebody that's not their background, like if they go to the building and zoning section of their city site, is it going to look like some foreign language, or is it readable?
It shouldn't. So keep it simple and go with the terms you know. So a lot of it, they're generic, and a lot of it's standard. So you're going to go to the city of whatever.com, City of Columbus. And like I said, all the housing and neighborhood stuff falls under the Department of Development. And then the Department of Development is going to have a division of housing, and they're also going to have a building code division. Yeah. And that's where the zoning, the building permits, all that stuff's housed. That stuff will tell you about your renovations and if you're going to move into community and have to deal with the permitting. But for the most part, when you're just doing your planning, and let's say you're an out-of-state investor and you want to really know the neighborhood plan and what's going on at the local meeting where the people are saying, no, don't bring auto parts zone to my street, or no, we don't want the pawn shop. It's because within the plan, there's certain requirements that they tell you, hey, we're enabling this type of development or these type of businesses, or this type of density for the number of stories or the number of new builds that they're going to build. So it should be fairly simple. You just have to know to go to the Department of Development and look for the housing services, and they're going to have a neighborhood services department, or go to the search bar and literally click community plan, and you'll start to see things like area commissions and other like city plans, and you'll be able to, if you want to click links, you'll find it.
And they have pretty pictures. Like I did it when I came to Columbus. They have pretty pictures. It's a report that's readable. I think the problem is that most people don't take the time to read them.
Or don't know it exists.
Right. But I mean, they're very readable. They have maps, and they'll tell you, okay, we want a large manufacturer, like an auto parts store or something like that, that's going to bring up so much traffic per day. I mean, it'll tell you how many traffic per day passes by on the major streets, everything. And it's really consumable.
So it's the trend. I want to make sure everybody understands the wisdom that you guys are giving right now. So it's in the transitional neighborhoods with these various indicators where you'll find the better deals.
It depends on your long-term investment strategy. Yeah.
It depends on what you want.
You know, I like to buy not only cash flow, but I want capital appreciation, and right. I need to be able to enter a market. So, you know, real estate's all about what you can afford. So initially for me, I was a lot less bank financing and more cash deals. So when you're looking, you know, back in 2010, it was like $10,000, $20,000. You can get a really great house. But, you know, is this house going to truly be worth 80, 100 grand, 130? So we really need to see what's the picture like in 5 years? Is this highway reconfiguration going to bring a new on-ramp that's going to bring all the traffic? Is this hospital really going to expand and take up the next 5 city blocks? So, you know,
I'll say it depends. You know, like one of John's, he had a multifamily that was across from a school that was going to be torn down and redeveloped. Yeah. And he was like an evangelist. Like, so when the time he was pitching me to be an investor in his company, he tours me around this like super scary multifamily in the middle of the hood. Like after work one day, I'm like, OMG, how did I end up, you know, talking to this guy?
It's a beautiful building.
Beautiful building. But anyway, so he's like telling me, oh my goodness, like change is going to come. Like, I just know it. And I'm like, okay, great. And he was right. He was absolutely right, because he had read the neighborhood plan, and you know it took about 1.5 years after that.
Yeah, it's slow growth, so it's not going to happen tomorrow once you read it.
Right.
But you'll know that, hey, if we're going to stay in a city for 5 years, 10 years, or if we're going to invest our money here, you know, how far off is it from, you know, really hitting the win?
I mean, it's almost like Monopoly come to life. Like
and just empowering your investment decisions to really be strategic. Right. And, you know, for me to see the transition in a community and to be able to watch it and participate, that's really beautiful. That's the instant gratification of real estate, you know?
You help bring up the standard of living in this neighborhood. That makes you feel good.
So would you recommend someone first starting off to look for a property that they can manage that's a little bit nearby or in close proximity to where they live, opposed to out of state? Because I do know a lot of investors now, they are purchasing all over and not just in the state that they live in. So would you advise that someone starting out kind of start local?
It depends on the stage and your money.
And your cojones.
Yeah. So on one end, I would highly recommend, it depends on how hands-on, once again, if you want to self-manage or not manage. So on one hand, I think really learning buildings intimately, you come to recognize real estate is fairly primitive, And once you learn one house and the layout and the way the plumbing works and the operations, the veins, the heart, the pulse, it's the same. And it's the same model in every state, minus some cities have furnaces, some has basements, some have boilers. But America begins to be the same. And I think you can systemize and replicate in any city afterwards. But sometimes you're priced out of your own city and you live in a great market. New York, I could not afford. And I wanted to grow a nest egg. I have friends paying $56,000 a year in rent. And that's a modest middle-class house in Columbus, Ohio. I mean, I don't want to go late to the party. I really want to like relax and not have to struggle all my life.
Yeah.
So it just depends. But starting in your backyard it's a really practical way to get started.
It depends on where your backyard is. You know, if it's Columbus, Ohio, or Indianapolis, or one of these, we advocate investing in secondary markets because your capital really does go further there, right?
The purchasing power.
Right. But you all are in Chicago, right? So am I going to go to Evanston? No, right? But I might go to Gary, right? So I might go to Gary, Indiana. So it all depends. There's an opportunity everywhere.
If you can drive 4 hours, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
New York to Columbus is 8 hours away. So if you're in a day's radius and you stay over for a night in a hotel, or if it's a quick hour and a half flight, $300, and you're coming every quarter just to check in, do it. I mean, follow the money. And if the money is in 4 hours away, I'm getting on a flight no different than if a corporation's paying you to be in business class,
Yeah.
But now it's for yourself and you're running it as an entity that deserves that attention.
Right. And I mean, even if you are away, you don't have to self-manage, right? There's always managing the manager, right? Which is a whole nother concept. But just because you have a property manager doesn't mean that you can, or you can, but you probably shouldn't just totally wash your hands. There's still a level of auditing, let's call it, that would be prudent to do. And hopping on a flight, I mean, $300 to protect your investment, I don't think is that bad. Once a year, twice a year.
Now, you mentioned investing in secondary markets. Can you break that down a little bit so people can understand what do you mean by the term secondary market?
Sure. So they're primary and secondary markets. The biggest primary markets that'll come to mind are New York, LA, Miami, the big cities, big money. Those are primary first-tier markets. The secondary markets include Chicago.
Columbus.
No, so Columbus is actually a tertiary market.
Oh.
So there's 3 categories: primary, secondary, and tertiary. So just think about the tiers in terms of accessibility, cost of living, affordability, and the robustness in the economy. So your big hitters are actually at the top in the primary. Chicago is actually a secondary.
Really?
There's a lot of capital in Chicago. There's a lot of money in Chicago.
Secondary.
But Columbus is still the Midwest. Even though it's the 15th largest city, that counts as a tertiary market. And Indianapolis, Columbus fall in the same category.
Huh.
So just geographically, the competitiveness of your city and the pricing really influences the category of the market.
So I would think about one of the major employers that aren't going away, right? So when you think about Columbus, Ohio, you have the largest university in the country, or Vice. I mean, I'm from Texas, right? So I moved from Austin. So both Austin and Columbus they fight for the largest university in the country. They're both state capitals. They're both mid-sized cities. They both have a reasonable amount of healthcare and things like healthcare, education, and government. Okay, we just had an election, but the government isn't going away. Education isn't going away, and those are stable jobs. Not necessarily that your tenants will always have those jobs, but that just helps
the overall economy.
Makes it a little more stable, right? So you want to be in a place that has more diversified employment base. So maybe not a Detroit where everybody is auto, right? But you want maybe not a Silicon Valley where everyone is high tech, right? So where can you go where it's a little more diverse? So like an Austin, a Dallas would be nice. All the Midwest cities I think are nice, like a Memphis, Nashville,
yep.
Atlanta, Indianapolis,
Baltimore,
all the boring places
Virginia,
that you would not want to go on holiday. That's where you go, right?
But they make great. America is not the coast,
Yeah. When you're like, do I want to go there on vacation? Nah.
That's where you should go to.
I want it there. Yes.
Very good point.
Now, there's 2 terms that you mentioned in another answer, and I want to make sure our audience is crystal clear on it. And you were talking about your how you were evaluating a property. You said, I want cash flow and capital appreciation. So that might have went past a couple people that are listening. So I want them to understand those concepts and how they apply, how they're applicable in the evaluation process and picking a property.
Absolutely. So we have something what we call archetypes. So John's a theorist, of course, and so there are these players. So there are always these actors. So think about when you're in high school.
It's theater. Think about theater. Okay, so actors and role players. Everyone has a character.
Right.
Continue.
Okay.
Use college.
Okay. Think of in college. Okay. You have the jocks, right? So those are going to be the good-looking guys that are going to get all the girls. You're going to have the nerds, right?
Front of the class.
Right.
Always on time. Always question in the air.
Right. You're going to have the band people that are going to be there. You're going to have the gothic people that are going to be dressed in black with
the
black nail polish.
jokers who have the funniness.
Right. So the same sort of architects, where the players change, but the roles stay the same thing happens in real estate. So you're going to have the cash flow king.
And what does cash flow mean?
Cash flow is monthly income. Point blank period. It's just like a paycheck, but a rental payment. So that means that this guy cares about how much money am I going to make every month above all else. So that means if I buy a house for $30,000 in 2016 and in 2050 it's still worth $30,000, and I don't care that I got eaten away by inflation, it's still worth $30,000. I do not care.
But it paid you every year $7,000.
Every year,
every year.
Clockwork. So
it's cash flow.
Do I really care? Think of it like buying a dry cleaners. I don't care if my dry cleaners is worth any more or my laundromat. I'm just caring about what I get every month. So that's a cash flow king. Then you have the appreciation aficionado. And we have an article about this. We can link in the notes. And so this guy is the one that's playing roulette. So think of this as your California guy. So he's saying, okay, I'm in California. It's 2010. I recognize that the market is down. And I know that I can make $150,000 in a year if I buy a condo that's oceanfront. So he's going to put all my chips on the table, and I'm just going to go for it. And at that point, you're almost gambling. And for some people, that works well. But
speculation.
It's definitely speculation. Exactly. Then you have the blends, which is where John and I fall. So this is a person that I really care about cash flow. But if I can make a strategic placement with that cash flow, where I can catch a wave, like with investing based on a neighborhood plan, then I will do that as well. So more of a blend. So I don't want the bottom of the barrel where only cash flow is all I care about. I'll play a little bit more so that maybe I have fewer headaches. But if I can ride a wave or a trend where there's going to be some development and get a little bit of appreciation, then I'll absolutely do that.
And just to follow up, one final point on that is that the beauty of real estate also is that it's capital preservation.
Yeah.
So in equities in the stock market, you can easily invest in a stock tomorrow. And when that button from green goes to red and you see your account balance going down, that emotional jerk, a lot of us know that feeling, and it's scary. In real estate, if I put my money into a property, I know that my money is sitting in the property. I may not be able to sell it tomorrow, but sometimes the same property you put $30,000 into in 2008, you can definitely get that $30,000 out in 2015.
Yep.
So it's just you keep your capital preservation, but you can also make the income.
Yeah, think of it like dividend investing. So I just want my monthly portion, right? So I just want my dividend.
But you don't dip, regardless of the dividend.
You don't dip as hard. I still get my dividend regardless. Yeah.
Now, first off, this interview has been fantastic. Oh my goodness, the information that you guys have shared. I'm sure that there are people taking notes right now. But I'm sure that there are also people saying, okay, did we really miss the wave up? Because we purchased an investment property back in 2007-ish, 2008, when everything
and
really
y'all know what that was.
Oh my goodness, it was a complete disaster. But however, we noticed that the trend, we do have the experience, that's for sure. But we do know that things are looking a little bit on the brighter side now. So do people still have the ability to really make money?
Or is it too bright?
Or is it too
too bright?
Yeah, are they too late?
So we may have conflicting opinions. Yeah, we didn't script this. So, in my opinion, I don't think we're at bubble levels. We're doing a lot of making up for building and development that did not happen during the Great Recession. So, there's a lot of, because of the cheap money and the interest rates, developers have really been able to build. Right now, there's an affordable housing crisis across the country. And the cost of construction is increasing. And really, you just see the influx in the Class A property. That's your higher end, really nice neighborhood, top rent. And you're like, who's able to afford this? But that's what's being built. I think there's a large opportunity to continue to see the market grow and stay consistent.
I would say it feels a little bubble-ish to me. But my opinion is if I can buy a property for less than its intrinsic cost, so less than the 2x4s and the insulation and the roofing shingles combined, then that means that's a value investment. So it may not be 2009 or 10 levels, but if I'm intrinsically buying it for less than the separate parts are inherently worth, then that's still a value play. And that's going to depend on what part of the country you're in. But I mean, in Columbus, you can still get a house that's a fixer for about $40,000, which and it'll rent for 8 to 9.
Pay yourself off in 5 years or less.
Yeah. So I mean, you can't really argue with that. Like that number still works. So it's not as wonderful as it was when it was $20,000. But I mean, $40,000 all in. That makes money all day.
And there'll be more deals if the market does turn. Those who are prepared and have their plan, I mean, they'll be ready to capitalize because they'll recognize the value.
Yeah. So I don't think a downturn is a bad sign. That's just time to go shopping. It's like a clearance sale.
Yeah.
So would you suggest that people stick with single family homes, or are the condos and the townhomes okay as well?
I'm anti-condo.
I agree.
Yeah. Condo, because of the HOA fees, right? So in my opinion, single family versus multifamily, that's totally up to you and what your goals are. Back to the business plan, right? So I can't tell you what your personal preference is. However, a condo is always going to have an HOA fee, and you don't control that.
Yep.
And that's the inherent risk in that. So
and approvals, not just fees, boards and approvals and permission.
The name of the game is to have as much control as you can, right? And the problem that I had with my first place is whenever I increased the rent, somehow the HOA always knew exactly how much to also increase my HOA dues. I'm like, this is a conspiracy. Like, how on earth, if I raise rent by $50 a month, then I get a letter the next month that HOA dues are going up by $50. Like, this is crazy. And it happened literally year over year. And so at some point you're like, you want to have control over it. The point of it is to make a profit. And if someone else is controlling that cash flow and is siphoning off the majority of your profits, like, who's really winning here? So I would say the risk is just too great. Single
family, it's a more liquid market. So there's a larger pool of buyers.
Yeah.
So you just have more opportunity and your exit strategy is a lot easier. And we touched on somewhat of the commercial and multifamily.
Yeah.
Scale and income is one thing, but you have to recognize that, anytime you go into commercial, not only are the loans and the renovations commercial price tag, but the exit in terms of who can buy that property becomes very small.
Right.
So there's only a certain level of archetypes in your community, unless he's an out-of-state guy, who can actually buy your 10 unit or your 20 unit or your 50 unit. Those guys are amongst themselves, and what they qualify as a deal, it's more rigid. Single family, you can go to a first-time home buyer, you can go to a move-up buyer, you can go to a Joe Schmo. I mean, you have a lot of options with single families, and you can perfect it before you get advanced.
Yeah.
Speaking of buyers, now you guys have walked us through, vetting neighborhoods properly. But another big mistake that costs people a lot of money, according to your teachings, is not properly vetting and managing potential tenants. So if that's such a big mistake that people are making, what should we do to prevent ourselves from making that mistake?
Systemize your whole business from day one and literally keep it as professional as possible. And what I mean by that is you start out with a checklist of every single document you need, the process, and not just that, but then you anything you would say in an in-person interview, like, okay, we go to the building and you want to walk through the unit. I'm giving you my rental pre-application letter that describes the process, tells you how many days before I'll get back to you, how long if you submit an application, what the criteria is, what I'll need to expedite it, what's going to hold it up. Real estate's a big game in education, understanding, and communication. So I think to bridge the gap for tenants and make it easier for them to go through your process, I mean, it's a lot of leadership in making it easy for them to flow through the process to rent your home. And you have to understand all the doors, all the flaws, and it's your job and duty to fully communicate the process. Right. So, a lot of times there's excitement in a new home in a new place, and you're like, when are you going to do my background? Or, what documents I need? But the process is pretty much the same. And I think too often, those are just some high level things, but there's a lot of other deeper diving that needs to be done.
Yeah. So obviously you want to do a background check, right? You want to check their income and their credit, depending. You may want to use housing assistance like Section 8 programs, but that's a choice that you can decide if you want to or not. Obviously, you want to collect a security deposit that is equal to your month's rent. And if you decide that they don't necessarily meet your criteria and they are more of a riskier client, then you can have a higher security deposit. Obviously, call the current landlord and as many of those as you can. We also call their employer. But on the back end, it's really about having a system, because it's very easy to say, oh, they look great, I like them, and oh my goodness, this property is vacant, so I really need somebody in there now.
Or they have cash in hand ready to give it to you. I have $1,000 right now.
Right.
Take my money.
Right. And then you're like, oh, but I forgot to do a background check.
But the money is green.
That's okay. We'll do that later. And then now, next thing you know, you have a circus in your place, and this just becomes a whole headache. So the more you can take the emotion out of it and just make it, I'm just going to follow this checklist, okay? I'm just going to follow the check. I mean, literally to the point where I have the advertising paragraph set up. So all I do is copy, paste, and change the address.
And going back to the business plan, you should solidify your team for management if you are a self-manager or not. Mm-hmm. So a lot of us don't expect it, but I had to go through my first eviction. Luckily, because it was a family business, I could call my dad and say, hey, what's the eviction attorney we used for the company previously? I need to do that process. Mm-hmm. Familiarize yourself with the people you may need. You may need a plumber, because they're going to be a clogged drain or hair. Yep. You may need a guy to replace a window because a kid might throw glass through something. Mm-hmm. And you may need an eviction attorney. Yes. So, just go down to the local court and say, hey, if I want to file an eviction, how long does it take and what does it cost? Yeah. Or, a prepaid legal service where you can have them on call. Yeah. So just really, get strategic in the beginning, and you should be able to have a binder that's your operations manual for your investment business. You
just don't want to be running by the seat of your pants. That's where all the drama comes from. People say, oh, I had a terrible experience. Well, I'm sure there's something you could have done, right? You have to take responsibility.
Being proactive.
Right, as much as we can. We can't control everything, but the more we can take the onus upon ourselves, because at the end of the day, you're in control.
You have the capacity to buy the place.
To buy your house and theirs. So to really say the tenant did it all, okay, like, you're in control. You're in the driver's seat here. So how can you take it to the next level and be as professional as possible?
A lot of people are listening right now and they're taking good notes, and so they're like, "Yeah, I need to develop my plan, my system, my checklist." But they're like, "Well, where do I start?" So how do a newbie in the game learn how to develop these proactive checklists so they can be like you, John, and just handing out the pre-questionnaire through the wall? Here you go. Here's everything you need to know. Like, how do we get to that place?
To learn that. So we have two ways. There's a free, obviously. So the first thing we'd say is go to the site and read the business plan article and read the book list. I mean, pick a couple books and read it.
So just a little bit about that. So we have a whole resource, a list of about 15 books that are very impactful in terms, not just real estate, but business in general. So like the E-Myth, which talks a lot about building systems in general. And so you can go to your local library and get those books and read them. And so that's definitely something that we recommend, is just get as much education as you can before you get in, right?
And, we find that a lot of times there's other professionals who are very diligent and proactive, and they're able to kind of think logically and work through the plan, but there might be some gray areas. So Richelle and I developed a buy and hold curriculum, a flipping curriculum, and a business plan coaching curriculum in which we could expedite and walk through the process over an 8-week period, and really just kind of have that sounding board and dialogue from those who have been there. I mean, I'll tell you, going through the eviction process, going through bad tenants, spending money, losing money, eventually you just want to get it right if you really want to survive. And because once you get a taste of the freedom, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to go back. Yeah. So you just say, hey, how can I, what's the difference between these big professional companies and the guys who are just starting off? And it's just your job to be proactive. So, there's 2 ways to get started right there.
Yeah.
Love it. So talk to that person right now that may be on the fence. They listen to this entire interview, and part of them, they're like, okay, maybe I can do this. And then another side of them, they're probably like, I don't know. So encourage that potential investor right now.
Okay. Real estate's a lot about delayed gratification is what I'll say, because it's a high capital expense up front, and then you get sometimes a small monthly fee in return. So to scale up takes some time. I'd say instant gratification comes with having an a packaged investment strategy and a plan. So first start with your plan and, being able to print it out in color and show it to people. When I got started, I was running around with my investment plan at Ohio State's Business Builders Club. People thought I was crazy. I'm like, I'm going to be a landlord. I'm going to be an investor. I know what I'm doing. And I'll tell you, I grew a lot faster than I expected, blew off all my benchmarks. And a big feeling of gratification is looking back at that plan and seeing where I was right or seeing where I exceeded my expectations for myself. Yeah. So, real estate can be tangible, but just do the diligence up front. So I think that person has to get the confidence and say, hey, list out the concerns I have. And if this process and plan and strategy can address these concerns, what's really stopping me from moving forward? I mean, we're no different than anyone else. We're still in our 20s. Wait, I'm not anymore. Wait. And you can edit that out. But, we're still young. We're still 20s-ish. Okay. And there's nothing that we've done that someone else can't do. Right. All we did was figure out where we're trying to go and map out a plan. If you've read Think and Grow Rich, it doesn't matter what your widget or vehicle is. If you decide that you want to do something, all you have to do is map out a plan and then diligently work towards it. And that's just what we've done. And obviously, we just want friends that can do it with us. So it doesn't have to be scary. It can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And obviously, we're there to help. And we don't want to be chilling on the beach with Mai Tais by ourselves. The community, the network, the people, we all have ideas and want to re-experience and relearn. So buy more houses so that we can all go party. Yeah, we'll come to wherever. You want to go to Chicago? Yeah, I haven't been yet. She's been.
Oh, you guys will love Chicago.
Yeah. 3 months out the year. 3 months out the year.
He
That's
always
it.
says that.
It's a little chilly. That wind is real. Yeah. But that wind is real.
Well, this has been incredible. Before we end this interview, we want to give space for you guys to tell everybody tuned in about your website, your podcast, all your resources, and how they can connect with you guys.
Absolutely. So our site is Life, Liberty, and Property. So that's N, like letter N, property.com. So Life, Liberty, and Property. And that's the same for our podcast, our Pinterest, our Twitter, all that. So, and our podcast is called Buying Freedom. Yes. So, real estate is really a vehicle to buy your freedom and gain your freedom, to financial freedom. So we're very new to podcasting, but it's been an exciting journey. And we just try to really bridge the gap. We learn from you guys the multiple modes of learning. Yeah. And realistically, as much as long form journalism is great, some people don't want to read 2,000 words. Right. So, whether we can do this and engage in a dialogue or, reach people where they want to be reached. Exactly. So we really appreciate this opportunity. Yeah. And it was so great meeting you at FinCon and, and congratulations on the People's Choice. Yeah. I mean, you got this community winner and the community's been growing. So, it's an honor to be able to do this with you guys. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's been incredible. You guys provided a ton of value, and we really appreciate you guys really pouring out so that our audience can learn from you all and get started in their own journeys with investing in real estate. So thank you, John and Richelle, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the show today.
Anytime. Thanks so much.